Hi everyone, it's so exciting to have you here today. I'm Nikki, and today on my channel, we are going to be looking at Valentine's cards. I have a good, easy 2-for-1 card. I have a pretty easy embossing folder card that really bring the wow factor to your Valentine's cards. Now, of course, these techniques could be used with any type of card, but since we're getting in the spirit of Valentine's next month, I wanted to give you a few card ideas. So we're using the new Simon Says stamp release, and let's get into it. I'm going to start with the Funky Hearts stencil. This is a layered stencil set, and you could use a plain stencil, you could use layered stencils. You're going to get more depth and effect by using a layered stencil, and it really makes this idea pop. So we're going to use this stenciled background for 2 cards, and I'm going to keep the colors very simple. I wanted to not have to think about this too much, so I decided I'd do more of a monochromatic look. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the stencil, get the color down, and then I'm going to come back in and create a shadow type effect that really gives it some 3D look and will really make your other cards stand out. So in this first part, since the squares are going to be kind of the background, I just took the same peony color, which is from Simon Says Stamp, and added it a little bit more concentrated on the edges of each of these. As you can see, I'm kind of going in opposite edges and just adding a little bit of depth. It kind of looks messy, but when the ink dries, it looks great. Okay, so check out how that turned out. I really love how there's that depth of these. I love the lines and how it works, but I just think it looks really good with that type of ink blending. So I'm going to put on the second one, which is similar. It makes kind of that checkerboard pattern in the back, but it also leaves a white line around each of these. So you want to make sure that you've got your stencil lined up well so that you have that white line in between your, I'm going to call it a checkerboard. I know it's not really a standard checkered board. And then I'm going to go in on this layer of the stencil, and I'm going to use the next level up of pink. So we used Peony first, which is a little bit lighter, and then now we're going in with Rose, and we're going to cover the whole thing, add some depth, and then we'll come in with some of these similar colors to create our hearts. So on this one, I've got everything covered in rose, and I'm going to use the next level up to create more defined. I came in with more of the rose, and I didn't feel like the square was as defined as I wanted it to be. So I decided to use a smaller brush and bring the next level in this color family up, which is called cherry. So I'm just going along the edges of each of the squares, and this just really gives them that nice 3D look. So we're going to turn this stencil into 2 different cards, and we're going to use the second card. I'm just going to call it like using our scraps. I'm going to just throw some things together and show you some design elements that I think really can work. First card we're going to do, we are going to use a large word die cut, and we're going to cut out of the middle of this amazing stencil. So it may seem like I'm doing a lot with my ink blending. You can definitely do this in a more simple way, but you have got to see what it looks like when I remove this because it looks so amazing that I decide to make all of it even more defined. So let me show you real quick. Look at those squares. Don't those look awesome with that shading? So I'm going to have to add a little bit more to my pink squares as well. So I wiped off that same brush, and then we're going, since the base layer of this one is peony and the next level up is rose, I'm using the next level up to create that nice shadow along the edge that really makes the middle look 3D. And so I'm going to go around all of this stencil doing the same thing, and let me show you the reveal. Okay, check it out. Oh my goodness, I just love how that looks. It looks so 3D and cool. So the next 2 layers of our stencil are hearts. So you need to pay attention on which squares you're doing the hearts. So this one is going over the darker hearts, or the darker squares that we made. So I need to pick the ink color that will show up on it. So I'm going to have to use the cherry ink, which is the darkest of our red inks. And since this is the darkest of my inks, what I realized is I can leave the middle undone. So I really kind of just did the edges of the heart so that I had that same beautiful 3D look. So if you see, I leave the hearts a little bit light in the middle, and that gives it a cool look. Let me show you how this turns out. Okay, look at that. That looks so good. So now we just need to do the hearts over the lighter squares, and we're going to be using the middle color, which is rose. We may add a little cherry to the outside edges just to give it a little definition, but we're going to try to keep it a little bit lighter heart. All right, so here's what it looks like. I just love the reveal. Now you notice that I'm missing one heart, and I don't know how I did that. So I went back and looked, and on the stencil that I was using, which is before the release, there wasn't a heart in that area, but there's one that fits perfectly. So I just went back and put that in there. According to Simon Says Stamp, they are probably just going to add that to the stencil. So it may take a little while before these come in because they're getting that changed from what I understand. But either way, you got plenty of hearts that fit there. It just wasn't on that first little plan there. So once I've added that heart, look at how beautiful this is. This is going to be our most elaborate of the backgrounds and of the cards. And what I decided to do is just try to let the background kind of shine through on this card. So we're going to add a large sentiment. And the key to this is you need a sentiment with a shadow. So this is called Lined Love You. We're going to use the Hot Tamale Sequin Mix, which is perfect for these colors. But you need the shadow of your word to be able to create the shaker card. And even better, you need the shadow of your word to be pretty large and the die cut word to be a little bit thinner. So I used the matte gold cardstock, and look at how thin this Love You is. You can't even hardly see it on this background because it's so thin. So we're going to use the shadow, and we're carefully going to place this in the middle of the card. You really need to be cautious on this because our background is the exact size of the card. So if you make it off, you're going to have to readjust your sizes and really work on your card. Okay, I'm using the Anna Griffin Impress Mini, and it's got a magnetic pad right here, so this die stays down, and I'm using my T ruler to make sure that I have everything centered in the middle. And so I'm making sure that I've got the Love You right through the middle. I made sure at the top, I make sure that the panel is level. So all of these things really help you out in the long run if you'll get them right before you send this through the die cutting machine. Now, if you don't have a magnetic mat that holds your die down like I have right here, then you can always use some tape. You just want to make sure that it's tape that's not going to mess up your beautiful ink blending and stenciling. So, some tape that is made to be removable, and you can tape everything down to make sure you have it centered. And here it is. Once I've cut it out, I'm saving all these little pieces because we're going to use this on another card where we do the scraps. And I've got this beautiful cutout. Now I'm going to show you quickly how to make a shaker card. It is actually a lot easier than you would think. Step one, flip your paper over, grab some double-sided adhesive. We are going to align this so that we can attach a piece of acetate that will create the window of the card. Now, if you don't have acetate, I know that people have used plastic packaging to upcycle it. Anything that is clear that you can see through, that you can keep reasonably static free will work. Okay, so once you remove all the adhesive backing, you've got all these little strips, and you can place your acetate right over it and cover this up. And this is the front window of the shaker. Okay, so this will be what you look through to see all those beautiful shaker pieces. So when you're doing your acetate, you just need to be able to cover up what you have open. So it doesn't have to be the same size as the back of your card, which is really nice because a lot of times you can save scraps. So now we have a window. Step two, add your foam tape. Now, the reason you need foam tape or something to create space is because you need to be able to have area for those shaker pieces to move around. So, you could use paper for this. You just need to create a window and make sure you've got a place where those little shaker pieces don't escape. So sometimes I will start doing one and realize that the type of adhesive that I'm using is not thick enough, and I will do a double layer to make that window even bigger. This one, I believe I was able to get away with one layer and it worked perfectly fine for those sequins because they're a little bit more flat. Now, when you're placing this last piece, it has got to fit perfectly. A lot of times I just eyeball this and then I see where it's going to be and trim. You just want to almost like push that edge in. So sometimes I go just a little bit further and really force it into this corner. That way we have no gap for those little sequins to escape. So, next with our shaker card, the most important thing, besides having your sequins and making sure that they've got a nice little place that they won't escape, is making sure you have removed sticky residue. So, we're going to use a powder tool and going to go all along the sticky edges of this to make sure that we have some good, smooth movement of our little embellishments. And I don't know why acetate is so staticky, but it gets little pieces on it. So I always look at it and use a little anti static cloth to try to remove any little hairs or anything that could possibly be there. Now, I think the best way to have the embellishments inside the pocket is to pour them on the background and then apply the front of the card to the back. And this gives you a couple of advantages. One, right now I'm adding the powder to the edges of the sticky material. This is going to hopefully keep these from staticking to the sides so that you have good movement. And I'm just using a generous amount of powder to do this. But with these in the middle, I will double check the size and make sure that this fits and doesn't squish all of the embellishments too much. It seems to fit. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my adhesive backing and apply it over these embellishments. Now that all of these are sealed in here, we can add our sentiment and this card will be done. I'm going to put a few embellishments on the front panel and I'm going to add that matte love you on here. And then we're going to use the negative space of this card that we saved to create another card out of scraps. I just love how this one turned out. I mean, you just can't beat shaker card, beautiful stencil, and fun gold cardstock. So for my scrap card, I have already got a couple of pieces from this. I had a little piece that I cut off of the stencil that's a long strip. I have some glitter paper that I really want to use and the outlined love you. So I've got the lines that I still need to put on my love you, and I decided I'd use some red glitter paper. The thing with creating a paper card from scraps is I always feel like I'm kind of throwing it together. So, what ties it together to me are all the extra little elements I put on it. All right, so I've got to cut this out of the beautiful glitter cardstock and then I'm going to put it in the middle of my shadow so that it kind of highlights its red and it just kind of highlights that pink background. Okay, just going to highlight my process here because I know sometimes people are like, well, how do you decide what you're going to do? Well, I have little collections of ribbon. And so I grabbed my white ribbon and my red ribbon, and I just start looking to see colors that seem like they go together and what just feels right to me. I like to have some texture on a card, especially when I'm using some scraps. And so I found this white, almost like velvety, type of ribbon and realized that this would be a nice little highlight for my card. But where to put it? Well, that's a whole other question. So there's a lot of arranging and playing with the card to see what seems to make sense. I did like it like this, but I ended up deciding that I wanted that white to be shown a little bit more. So I did it horizontally along the bottom. And then I knew that I wanted it to not just be a big white area. I wanted to put something else over it. So I had this one little scrap of red, almost like a red velour string. And I thought maybe this. Then I realized I had some baker's twine that I really loved, and I ended up using that instead. So I added a couple of little sequins and just that twine and the ribbon, and look at how cute this card is. You would never know that I was just using scraps for this. I really loved how it turned out. Now this next one may be my favorite of all. It's using an embossing folder, and if you know me, you know I love embossing folders. Now, one of my favorite secrets for embossing folders is to start with colored cardstock. So I did spray just a little bit of water on this colored cardstock, and then I'm going to put it inside the embossing folder. And then we're still going to do some ink blending on it to create some gorgeous texture. All right, here's how it looks. Oh man, look at all of that texture. It's so beautiful. So now we've started with a pink piece of paper, which means we have less ink blending to do. I'm going to use some bubble gum, and this is kind of like a midway pink, and I'm going to add just to the edges of this so that it gives it that spotlight look without having to ink blend the entire panel. Next, I'm going to add a little darker pink called Taffy, and this is just making that more of an emphasis that it is that spotlight effect. And I really like these two colors because they're going to match the glitter paper that I had picked out. So I kind of went with this more fuchsia type pink because that's the color glitter paper that I have, and it looks so good together. So I knew that I wanted the spotlight of the card to have some glitter in it, and this is the Hot Tamale pack of glitter paper, and this pink in it is so beautiful and looks so good with this piece. Now this embossing folder comes with 3 little dies. They're hearts like this. So I'm going to create glitter hearts, and we're going to emboss some vellum hearts. Now on this embossing folder, each of these little hearts has different patterns. So I'm just going to take these 3 hearts and I'm going to add them to various patterns on here. Now once you do this, you need, since you're not using tape or anything, you just need to make sure that you have everything in place before you send it through the embossing machine. I do think it's easier to pre-cut the die, then send it through the embossing folder, because if you do it the opposite way, you can really flatten out your design. So just do it, hold it closed, be careful as you put it in the machine, make sure everything is lined up once you've got it closed, and then look at the beauty. I did cut my sentiment from the same glitter paper, and now it's just a matter of arranging these adorable hearts on here. I'm going to show it to you up close so you can see all the texture that we created just with that little bit of embossing on the vellum. I hope you had fun creating all these wonderful Valentine's cards with me. They turned out so cute, and I just love that we can create so much with similar colors, but it can be so drastically different with embossing folders, stencils, and just using the scraps. So I hope you got some inspiration today. Make sure that you hit the like and subscribe. And also, if you're looking for any of these products, check the description. I will link them all there. Have a great day. Bye.